Hello and welcome to the Inspire Life podcast. My name is Michael. I am your producer and host, and today, really excited to have transformational sales coach and podcaster Lois Koffi on the podcast. So, Lois is actually our first ever repeat guest, and we talked a little bit about what she's doing. She's really switched up her career a lot and who she's working with, but we talked a lot more about plant-based medicine, specifically the psychedelic medicines, so ayahuasca and mushrooms in particular. So super pumped. She's our first guest who's talked about this topic. This is something that, if you haven't heard of it yet, you're going to be hearing a lot more about plant medicine going forward because there is a wave on the way. So I'm not going to say too much more in the intro. I do want to say that today's episode is brought to you by Inspire Life Chiropractic Center, where we stand for your health being inspired by choice. Inspire Life's brain-first approach to chiropractic will leave you seeing results that you often won't find from other chiropractors. We work primarily with people dealing with mental health, and specifically women, as well as kids. So if you are interested and looking to find some relief from what ails you, you can reach out to Dr. Mel, and you can reach us at 651-756-1218. You can also check out our website, inspirelifechirocenter.com. So without further ado, let's jump on into the episode. Welcome to the Inspire Life podcast. My name is Michael. I'm your producer and host. And today I'm really excited to have Lois Koffi on the podcast. And actually, Lois was I think you're our first repeat guest. So I'm really pumped to have you back. I know a lot has changed in your life, in your business, how you're operating nowadays. So I'm just going to let you introduce yourself again, reintroduce yourself, I should say, and let everyone know where you're at and what you're doing.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You and Inspired Life. I mean, I just love you guys so much. And I've had you guys on my podcast twice. So it's kind of cool that I get to be a repeat offender on here. So thank you.
You got it.
Since last time, I actually call myself now a transformational sales coach and podcaster of Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. And I really got fired up because in 2021, I was making a ton of money, crushing the sales thing, because that's what I teach, right? I help people with lead generation and sales strategies, and specifically how to close more sales in less time. Most people, they do cold calling or they only follow up once or twice and then they run on to the next prospect.
Right.
And so I help them clean that up and do it with excellence. So it wasn't that challenging for me to pivot when the pandemic hit, going with never having had an online business, but having had 20 years of sales experience. It was fairly doable for me to get to multiple 5 figures a month with having never done an online business, just following my 4 steps that I teach, right? But
Yeah.
to be honest with you, a year ago, in February, I hit my highest income, 40K, in that month, and I would have thought,
Congrats.
well,
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. I was so depressed.
Huh.
I had all this money and I felt dead inside. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I'll be happy when I hit my income goal, or I'll be
Mhm.
happy when I hit my sales goal. I'll be happy when," right? And I had to be honest with myself. And I honestly was kind of scared and confused and realized that I had some work to do. And one of my
Mhm.
mentors at the time, it was that month, he said, "Lois, you're in your head too much. You got to get in your body. You got to get into your heart. You got to go inward." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I've been meditating for 7 years. I thought I had it down. I could exercise, all of the typical things that I
Right.
knew for bringing joy and happiness and health and vibrancy into my life. I thought I had it down, but he was right. I was so stuck in my head, so focused on the analytical mind and not really tapping into that heart brain. We do have 3 brains in our body, one in our head, one in our heart, and one in our gut, with, intuition and how gut health impacts your mental health. And I knew all that. However, I was kind of running from it. And what happened was I realized I had a lot of grief and a lot of trauma. And I know Dr. Mel and I actually reconnected also last year because I was really struggling with getting into my heart and getting into my body. So, what I had chosen to do at the suggestion of friends was start microdosing, start working with plant medicines, start
Yeah.
working with ayahuasca, psilocybin, and a whole host of others. So, since April of last year, 2021. I can now happily report I have lost 20 pounds.
Congrats. That's
I
awesome.
have cut way back. I was pretty much a binge drinker.
Yeah.
I cut way back on that. I was no longer a workaholic. I was able to be more present in life. I was able to cry a lot, release a lot of physical trauma, release a lot of tears and grief and suffering. I changed my relationship with pain, suffering. I changed my relationship with fear because before what I realized, Michael, was that whole never let them see you sweat in the sales industry and the business world. You can't show weakness was what I thought. You can't let people know about your shortcomings. So I just started sharing my story. I started doing monthly plant medicine, spiritual, shamanic supported journeys. And that's what led me to where I am today. And I through that journey, I also started talking to people and having private conversations, public conversations on my podcast, and realized I wasn't alone. That was my fear was, oh my gosh, I'm going to look like I'm weak. I'm going to look like I'm struggling. I'm going to look like I'm quote unquote not enough. I'm bad. I'm less than, all those crappy things that we self sabotage ourselves with. And on the flip side of that, I was like, you know what? I want to help more people than just with their lead generation and sales strategy. So I went and got another certification on how to recode your superconscious. It's called the Magnetic Mind certification. And it really transformed me as well and helps people, be in their zone of genius, be able to really connect with their heart, their purpose, their passion, and then how do you bring that forth into your daily life and bring more creativity and joy and fun instead of oh my gosh, how am I going to pay the bills, oh my gosh, I got to hit my goals. And I really pivoted so much so that I've changed a lot of the way I'm showing up, and even with my clients and my programs have transformed. So that's a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a breath and let you take over. But thanks so much for allowing me to share because it's been a tremendous ride.
Well, of course. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. There's a lot that we can take away from that. Oftentimes, it looks like on the outside, maybe everything is going perfect in someone else's world, and that we see on social media, or just, we tell ourselves that we should
Mhm.
be living into this story, this idea that because we're making money and we're excelling in business and we're doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing, that we're supposed to be truly happy. But recognizing that that's not all that life is. There's so much more to it that we oftentimes forget about. And sharing your story about the plant medicine, I mean, that's fascinating to me. I think you're the first, well, you're definitely the first person on our podcast who has talked about it. I know it's growing in popularity. More so it's just growing in awareness. Like, yes, there are people who are doing these things. They are reconnecting with these, honestly, medicines that, I mean, people have been using these for hundreds, if not thousands of years to do many things, right? And if you look at the literature and the research that's coming out, especially when I'm more familiar with just psilocybin, and we can talk a little bit more maybe about the other ones. And I'm curious too to learn more about your journeys and how that even looks and where people might be able to get started. But psilocybin in particular, they just started doing research again within the last decade after stopping in the 60s whenever the war on drugs started, 60s and
Yep.
70s.
Yep.
And they're finding amazing effects, especially when it comes to psilocybin, when it comes to treatment resistant depression. There was a study just this actually published by a company called Compass Pathways in the UK. In the last 2 months, I think the study came out, but they had, I think it was 220 individuals with treatment resistant depression. Now, this is a depression where you're not getting out of bed, you're not doing anything, and they were on multiple medications already for over 2 years. And over 60% of the people in that study had full relief from their depressive symptoms in one dose, in one
Wow.
guided session with psilocybin. So there's a lot of efficacy to these drugs. It's not just, a bunch of hippies going for a walk in the woods with a bunch of mushrooms. It's not like that. There's really,
Hmm.
there's so many companies and different people doing research now, again, bringing it back because they realize these are important. So I just wanted to touch on that because that's a really important thing that's going to be up and coming as we continue to progress, I think. And we look at, mental health as a society, and the rates are getting worse. Clearly, things aren't working that we're doing and that we have that's currently in place. So I just thank you for sharing your story. Really, really cool. And I do, again, I want to touch back on those questions I wanted to ask. So, what did that, and, share as much as you want, but what did that look like? I mean, how did you even figure out how, where, and how to do this? I'm just very curious because, I've eaten some mushrooms and gone for walks in the woods, but I've never done it. I've never done it like in a clinical setting. So I'm just super curious, or not even clinical, but like a shamanic setting. I guess I'm not even familiar what that even looks like. So I'm curious.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful and humbled to share because I believe it is the here and now and the wave of the future. I mean, Joe Rogan's talking about it on his podcast a lot, and I'm talking about it on my podcast now openly a lot. And it's funny you mentioned mushrooms and going into the woods. So right away, when my mentor told me in February of last year, find someone who can help you with psilocybin, ayahuasca. And I was lucky because maybe it's because I'm in Southern California, but I already had attracted people into my life that had access to that. In fact, one of them is my mushroom shaman, who I did an interview with on my podcast in December of this past year. And he and I did a walk in the woods, but it was a microdosing, a higher dose shamanic 3 hour guided walk, and just really having that first experience was perfect for me because I was out in nature. And that was the other thing that I really missed is being on your computer, being on Zooms all day, every day, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
less and less in nature and feeling connected to, Mother Earth. And so he got me out in there, and then I also just asked for referrals. I did a guided journey with him later on in the summer, which was transformational. It was a private, and then I just got referrals to other people who had access to these medicines of all varieties, and
Mm-hmm.
I was open to finding whatever those people were doing, and they had, ceremonies, very, people who are certified facilitators and above board. That would be my recommendation is
Right.
it's got to be done, and set and setting is so critical. And if you have watched the Netflix show Fantastic Fungi,
Oh, so great.
it's so great. And I
Yeah.
mean, mushrooms were here longer before, before the dinosaurs. Like they've been here forever.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to better understand it, I would recommend people watch that. But I was able to go deep within. I was able to quiet the mind and be more present. Um, and really better understand myself, and it also allowed me to cry a lot because I think I share this with people. I've had a lot of death. Both my parents are gone. My brother died also in 2020, and just a lot of grief upon grief upon grief. And I didn't know what to do with it. And so the body keeps the score, right? The body was
Yep.
holding on to it, and I didn't want to feel it. So I numbed out by working too much and drinking too much alcohol for quite a few years, actually. And
Yeah.
this medicine was able to help me go within and cry. I mean, I saw my brother, I saw my dad, I hung out with my friends who committed suicide. I mean, I literally saw them. I had visions of them and was able to communicate. And I've seen a lot. I don't want to go on and on and on, but it helped me feel closure, and it also helped me cry and release a lot of things that I couldn't consciously do because I just didn't know how. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a huge spiritual awakening slash physical and emotional release, and very healing.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry to hear about all the loss. That grief, like you mentioned, it's heavy, and we're not necessarily socialized or brought up in a way where we learn how to deal with grief or how to do it in a way that's going to help us move through it. And like you said, our body holds on to it. And to talk, I guess, a little bit more, because I've researched these substances a lot, just because I think they're fascinating. And the way they work, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lois, but we hold on to things in our brain, and we have different parts of, not necessarily different parts of our brain, but we have different ways of processing and thinking and really just intaking stimuli and formulating it within our brains, within our bodies, that we don't always have access to. It's always there, but we don't necessarily have access to that way of thinking or that way of perceiving the world around us. And these substances, specifically, psilocybin within mushrooms, and then in ayahuasca, it's DMT, I believe, they kind of break down the barriers and they allow us to access ways of perceiving stimuli and ways of perceiving the world around us that we aren't necessarily used to. And we also can perceive things within us that we often block, and that, through root experiences, as Dr. Mal would say, or through traumas, or just through different experiences, we block ourselves from processing things in specific ways. And so it's not necessarily like these substances are bringing like an external idea or way of perceiving the world into us. It's already within us, but it breaks down the barriers so we can access that. Is that your understanding as well, or just
Yeah, and
curious?
I absolutely the way when I talk to like my sales clients and just people in general, because I used to be a health and fitness coach, right? I coached
Yep.
thousands of people in health and fitness and weight loss and mind body connection through that, functionality. And I realize so many of us are in autopilot mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't even consciously think. We're just in autopilot mode. And that's what I compare that to what they call in the industry the default mode network. It's
Mm-hmm.
like your brain is that hamster on a wheel. Just 90% of the thoughts you had today are from yesterday. It's just repeat
Yep.
patterns. And if it's so deeply ingrained in you from your parents, your ancestors, and then of course society today, right?
Yep.
Then how do you break through that? So it helped me shut down that autopilot mind that was always go, 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 overthink, overjudge, overstimulate, over medicate, and in this way be able to trust the innate wisdom we have in our bodies and in
Mm-hmm.
our hearts, in our souls, and the medicine, the plant medicine. I am a big fan of if someone says, oh, you're doing drugs, I correct them right away. I'm like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
this is plant medicine that has been around, for billions of years, actually. And so it knows so much and it can teach us so much if you are open and you set that intention and you trust the process. I can't even begin to tell you. I have way more authentic joy. I have much more authentic peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel just generally naturally happy. And I could have never done that through talk therapy. Not saying that it's good, bad, right, or wrong. It didn't work for me. I needed to have something that went deeper and helped me go within. And now, guess what? Now I don't have to rely on plant medicine for that. Now I can actually go within without that and feel some similar effects. I may not have the visuals, of course, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And you touch on a really important point. Whereas when it comes to, talk therapy, it's a lot of it is focused on the mental. And again, not that it's right or wrong, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. And like you mentioned at the start, reconnecting to your heart center, your heart brain, uh, the the plant medicines really give us a link in the ability. I think Dr. Mel, she likes to refer to it as psychosomatic experiencing. So it breaks down the barrier and allows us to feel the things both mentally and physically and emotionally and even spiritually, if
Mm.
you want to throw that in there. It's
Mm.
really, it links it all together and allows you to fully feel into who you are, your authentic self, for lack of better terms. But it gives you the ability to really truly do that. And then, like you said too, it's a tool. We learn from it, from using the tool, and then you get to the point where you can access these states and get resourceful enough within yourself that you don't necessarily need that tool forever. It's all about our bodies continuing to adapt and learn and just create better strategies going forward, and having the perspectives where, like you said, we can get out of that thinking that's from yesterday or that's from our parents or from generations beforehand, to have new ways of thinking and experiencing. That's how we're able to access those different states and to create new strategies that are more sustainable going forward for our lives, right? So just wanted to kind of summarize a little bit of what you were saying.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to partner with you guys, like having, Dr. Mel's breath work and all those different tools that are out there for the general public. And a lot of them are free,
Mm-hmm.
just go on to YouTube. Um, but it has been more transformational for me to have the guided support to go inward for sure.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I do want to give you a chance to, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned earlier at the start, is your new certification and what you're kind of doing with your practice now. So you want to share a little bit more?
Absolutely. Thank you so
Cool.
much. If
Yeah.
one of the things that I discovered, and it was really cool, it was actually at a shamanic retreat with plant medicine, I was crying. I just was letting loose and sharing, some of my own tears with and fears with the group. And one of the women said, "Oh my gosh, you got to read this book." And it's called "You're Not Broken" by
Hmm.
Christopher Michael Duncan.
Okay.
And I right away was like, okay, yeah, I need to read that. It sounds really compelling. And sure enough, he talks about how we are perfect, whole, and complete just as we are. And I find a lot of times, and I was the same person who, a year ago, even though I was making lots of money, I just was still feeling like I had to do more in order to be
Hmm.
enough. I had to work more, or, even physically, I felt like I had to drink more alcohol. It was trying to fill a void, right? But if I would have really, really just gone inward, and which I did, and this is what I discovered, and the book helps with that. It's really like you're not broken. You're perfect, whole, and complete as you are. And if we all come from that space and believe in our zone of genius and every day act as if and not say someday when I make this money or someday when I lose this weight, someday, it's like here and now is when you can be present with your truth and your zone of genius. So I wanted to get the certification to help people live their best health and vitality and their best business, attracting the best clients, showing up for life the way they were born. Just like a newborn baby comes out, they're happy, right? They're just like living
Good to
life.
go.
I know. And somewhere along the way, as adults, right, especially, I'm in my mid 40s, so I feel like I kind of had my midlife crisis, and hit rock bottom. And I want to help people magnetize and attract their best health and vitality as well as their best wealth. Goes really well with my podcast, Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. So,
Yep.
any of your listeners that would like to be able to have a complimentary 1 hour magnetic mind coaching session on whatever that one thing is to help them magnetize their mind and play in their zone of genius and be exactly what they want to be here and now, recognizing that they're not broken, right? There's nothing to
Hmm.
fix. Then I'd be happy to give them that session. And I have a few other free tools I'll throw in case you have listeners that are out there that are salespeople that want some free accountability tools to also just be more present in their day and be more reflective and less on autopilot. So I'll throw that in as well.
Cool. Well, it's very kind of you to offer that, Lois. And I think you'll share a link with me, and I can just put that in the show notes. So
Yes,
make
yes.
sure sign up. I mean, this type of call for our listeners. Lois is talking about some really important things that we are so often told that we need to be doing XYZ or thinking or being or looking like or just being something other than what it is that we truly actually want to be or who we truly are. And she's going to help you tap into that. And she's going to do a fantastic job at it. So make sure to click that link, check it out. And then two, I like that you're going to include some extra tools when it comes to accountability. We know accountability is such an important thing. I mean, me even too as a fitness and health coach, like I need some external accountability for certain things that I want to do too. So I'm glad that my partner Jess helps me with that. But that's a lot of really important things and great tools that we all can utilize that you're sharing. So I do thank you for sharing that with our audience, because I know you don't necessarily do that for everyone. So I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Happy to do that for this amazing, amazing community. You guys are just incredible beings and light workers. So thanks for being in my universe.
Of course, yeah, and thank you, Lois, again for being on the podcast. And I'm sure down the road we'll have you back for another episode. Maybe at that point I'll have my hand at a shamanic kind of healing ceremony, and I'll share a little bit more of my story when that happens.
Awesome. Come out and visit me in California.
All right, sounds like a plan. Thanks, Lois, and for all of our listeners, as always, keep inspiring. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning into the Inspire Life podcast today. Please comment, like, and subscribe on whatever channel it is you're tuning in on today. If you're on Spotify or iTunes, please consider leaving us a 5-star review if you think this is 5-star content. If not, then don't. But it really helps us out and to get the message out to more people. Also, make sure to check out the links in the show notes. That's where you can get your free gift from Lois, as well as check out some of the other things she's offering. And also to check out her podcast, The Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. It's a fantastic show. I personally really enjoy it myself. Lastly, you can jump on over to Facebook and join the Inspire Twin Cities community. That's where Dr. Mel and I share all of our content and information to help you continue to live your most inspired and thriving life. And Of course, as always, until next time, keep inspiring. Thank you.